The voice of the fan. Drop a bounce pass, throw down the rim rocker. Lay up off the glass right past the shot blocker. I follow through like Kobe's is money. You can cash it. For news on LA hoops, come over to Peach Basket. Up to date sports, post game reports.
All right, we are Peach Basket, a site dedicated to all things basketball. We're really just a group of passionate fans excited to talk hoop. If you are one of us, you might enjoy the next few minutes. What this is something that's kind of been a pet project of mine for a while, and I'm excited to share it with you all finally after a few seasons and into week 16 of the current season. That is the power ranking. This is something I've been doing for a while, and I do it a little differently because of the fact that I really never enjoyed power rankings. They're kind of a necessary evil in the sense that, we all watch them, we all read them, we're all interested in them, we want to see where our team lands, but they always seem so subjective to me, and I never liked that. Players would move up or down based on, the whim of whoever was writing the power ranking. Sometimes a team would get blown out and that would cost them. To me, a W is a W, an L is an L. So I wanted to take away all that, subjective thought out of the power rankings. I'm kind of an analytical guy. I like spreadsheets. I wanted a spreadsheet to tell me based on something, who is number one, number two, number three, etc. So I came up with this. This is a strength of schedule power ranking that really is just math. It just works. Every week I punch in numbers based on who beat who, and the spreadsheet tells me where people land, where teams land. I want to share that with you today for the first time, which is kind of cool, at least for the first time on YouTube. First thing we got to do, though, is kind of give you information as to how the values of the teams work. First off, every NBA team in the Western Conference is broken into or put into a category. They're either a quality team, a good team, or a bad team. We'll go over that in a little bit more detail in just a bit. But once you have those three categories, it's pretty simple. You play one of those three teams, one of those three category of teams, and you either beat them or you lose to them. You're either at home or on the road. Where you do it and what the outcome is determines the points you get. You win at home against a quality team, you get 10 points. You lose at home to a good team, you get 2. You lose on the road to a bad team, you get 1. You can see how it works. Pretty straightforward. Now you'll notice a couple things here. First, the 0 and the 11 are highlighted. That's because that's the very best and the very worst you can do. You lose at home to a bad team, you get no points. It doesn't get any worse than that. You beat a quality team on the road, on their home turf, you get 11 points. In addition to that, you get a little bump. The good quality wins give you a bump, and the bad losses kind of cost you. So a 0 is a BL, a bad loss, and 11 is a QW, quality win. And those are important as we go through our power rankings. Now, once you have this, you understand how the numbering system works. But what's important is understanding where the teams fit. Or is your team a quality, a good, or a bad team? This is the way it's set up right now. The Jazz, the Blazers, the Nuggets, the Suns, the Mavs, the Clippers, and the Lakers are all quality teams. The good teams are the Spurs, the Warriors, and the Pelicans. And the bad teams are the Rockets, the Grizzlies, the Wolves, the Kings, and the Thunder. Now, what's important to note here is I evaluate the teams twice a season, once at the start and again at the All-Star break, because things change. A really good example is the Rockets. They're a bad team right now. One of the worst, unfortunately, for them. But they weren't at the start of the season. They were pretty good. They still had James Harden. They still had Russell Westbrook. They were, I don't recall if they were a quality team or a good team, but they were certainly not listed as a bad team. They are now. This is where the teams landed. This is where they are. This is what the value of a win or a loss against them would be based on the category. So with that as kind of an introduction as to how things work, let's jump right into week 16 and see how your team fared. The bottom two teams haven't moved in a while, and it doesn't look like they're going to. Unfortunately, the Rockets and the Timberwolves are probably going to be holding up the rest of the conference through to the end of the season. There's some movement, a little, where Houston will bump up or Minnesota will jump down, but I don't see anybody taking the bottom two spots from these two teams, unfortunately for them. Coming in at 13 is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, the Thunder were the biggest droppers of the week. They dropped 2 spots. You can see that here. They were at 11 last week, 13 this week. We elaborate on that a little bit in the article, which will be linked in the comments. Feel free to read that if you want to find out a little bit more about why the Oklahoma City Thunder dropped 2 spots this week. Coming in at 12 are the Spurs. The Spurs were in a bit of a free fall for a while, but you'll notice they moved up a spot from 13 to 12. They did that because of the strength of a quality win. They beat the Dallas Mavericks at home in Dallas. And remember what we said, quality win, it's going to give you just a little bit of a bump. And that bump helped the Spurs move up this week after what's been a really rough ride for them. Next up are the Sacramento Kings. The Kings are an interesting bunch because if you look at the record, their overall record, 22-31, that's not as good as the Spurs 25-26. But what distinguishes the Kings, even though you see they dropped 1 spot from 10 to 11 from 10 to 11, I had it right, after an 0-3 week. They had a bad week. But if you look, they've got 8 quality wins to the Spurs 6 and only 6 bad losses to the Spurs 8. So that tells me the Spurs have had a rough time beating quality teams and losing the bad teams. They've been doing that more than they need to. And if you look at the Kings in relation to the other teams on the list, 11 through 15, they've got more quality wins than anybody, which is why they come in at 11. Sacramento Kings fans are coming to me and telling me they're too high. And I get that. But the reason they are where they are is because they are beating good teams more so than everybody else. And that counts for something on these power rankings. It's math. It just works. Coming in at 10 are the Pelicans. Now, the Pelicans had a 2-2 week and moved up 2 spots from 10 to 11. From 12 to 10. There we go. And we elaborate on their move up in the article, which will be linked below if you want to read a little bit more about the Pelicans and their 2-spot rise in week 16. Then were a couple teams that didn't move much this week. The Golden State Warriors had a 2-1 week, but stayed steady at 9. The Memphis Grizzlies had a 2-2 week, but stayed steady at 8. Then the Blazers come in at 7. They dropped a spot to the 7th spot from 6. They had a 1-3 week, not an ideal week for the Blazers. A little bit of a problem for them, but nothing to be too concerned about. They flip-flopped with the number 6 team. The Lakers were at 7 last week. They're at 6 this week. And they moved up that spot, again, on the strength of a quality win against the Nets in Brooklyn. That bumped them up after a 2-1 week. That's why the Lakers and Portland flip-flopped. And one thing I want to note, again, going back to what I said before, if you look back at Sacramento, 8 quality wins. Look at the Lakers. Look at Portland. They've only got 6. Golden State's only got 7, which, again, talks to Sacramento's potential and also the problem the Lakers and the Blazers and Golden State Warriors are having. They're just not beating quality teams at home. And obviously, to go far in the playoffs, you're going to have to do that. I'm not particularly worried. The Lakers, of course, are down a few players. But it is interesting to see how, lacking they are in that department. Coming in at 5 are the Dallas Mavericks. They haven't moved at all after a 2-2 week. Number 4, the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets went 3-1 and are holding steady at number 4. Now, the top 3, the upper echelon of the West, probably amongst certainly the 3 top teams in the NBA, are certainly 3 of the top 5. The Clippers come in at 3. The Clippers were the only team that had an undefeated week this week. They were 4-0, all games at home. So certainly playing well. You notice quite a few so far, the most quality wins. What sticks out to me about them and the Lakers, only 2 bad losses. That's important. You got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. The Lakers, the Clippers have been doing that pretty well. Coming in number 2 are the Phoenix Suns. The Suns went 3-1. They had a good week. I think that one loss was to the Clippers. But they're holding steady. It wasn't enough to get the Clippers up to where the Suns are. And number 1, again, the Utah Jazz. And once again, let's take a look at the Jazz. What sets them apart, certainly those 40 wins are impressive. But look at that bad loss column. They've only had 1 bad loss. That's impressive at this point of the season. And that's what's keeping them well above everybody else in the Western Conference. That is week 16. Those are the 15 Western Conference NBA teams based on math and the strength of schedule power rankings. Hope you're back next week. We'll do it again, and we'll hopefully have your team move up a couple of spots. We'll talk next week.